Hello, everyone. Welcome back. And I am joined by Nadia Vratna from Slido.
Hello.
And we're going to have a really cool meta conversation. You guys seem to really like the conversation we had about how we produce this hybrid event. So we figured, why don't we talk a little bit about live stream audiences? And everyone's incorporating live streams into their events. And Slido is actually the platform that we're using to engage this live stream audience. But I think a lot of the things we're going to talk about will probably be applicable to any software. But we want to talk a little bit about how can we engage our live stream audience? How can we get them to, participate, right? Because we don't want to say no one wants to sit at home and watch TV all day long. People want to, use the Bandersnatch, choose your adventure and everything like that. So want to dive into it. So to give everyone a little bit of idea, I know you guys had a recent event where you guys actually had a live stream and had the Q&A functionality of your software. And I think for people to understand how this can definitely be used to democratize and get people engaged, can you tell the Geneva story,
Yes,
which I think is super duper cool?
Yeah, sure. So basically, in Geneva, as you might know, there's a lot of European, but also world leaders meeting to discuss policies and future of Europe as well of future of all the countries. And they had a Q&A session when they were discussing, employment, and they were live streaming the session, and they decided to basically open the Q&A to everybody in the world. And so basically everybody who had internet connection could ask questions to those leaders, and they can ask tough questions as well. Because they don't really have a chance to sit with them in that room and raise their hand. So in that case, they can have a feel of what people think, what do they want to discuss. And because Slido offers this Q&A, there's also a functionality that allows you to upvote other people's questions. So some of the tough questions actually made it to the top. One of them was from Eastern European countries where the salaries aren't that high, and those leaders needed to address that, and that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's really cool. I think that's one of the coolest functionalities of your guys' system too, is that ability to, and that's why I think we chose it for this, is that not only can they submit the questions, but then you can upvote them to get them to the top. So, we literally keep an iPad that allows us to essentially, well, it's in Brand's hands now, but to ask the questions, and then he shows them to us right on that page, and you can literally allows almost that democratization. I think you guys have coined that term, democratization of audience engagement. Is that right?
Exactly. So you have a second moderator almost. So there's a feature which allows you to filter the questions before it gets live, but then the audience is choosing what are the topics. Because if I'm doing a Q&A with mics, it's almost like I have no clue what the question is going to be. Totally. Is it relevant for the rest of the audience? And by giving everybody a chance to participate, everybody has a voice. So the top questions get to the top, and you make sure that you get the most value out of the Q&A.
That's awesome. I think I'm definitely going to come back to talking about how to best moderate questions in a little bit. But what other sort of functionalities do you think are key that audiences for live streams need to be able to do? What sort of actions do you want to see when you're watching a live stream, for example?
Yeah. So I think what we can all agree on is that the live stream is really on the rise. You don't necessarily need to sit in the audience to be part of the, let's say, conference or even an internal meeting. And it is important to engage those remote employees, because if you're just sitting at home watching a live stream and you might be just eating cereals, you want to make sure that you're actually part of the meeting. Absolutely. And you want to make sure that everybody has that voice, as I mentioned earlier. So usually how it works is that when the live stream begins, what is a really good practice is to have also an MC or a moderator that is dedicated to your remote or online audience. And what we also do at Slido, at our internal meetings, we have that facilitator that is only dedicated to us, people who are in the regions. And when we have conversations, we take it online and we just discuss amongst ourselves. And we're using Slido to get this feedback and to ask questions and to participate in live polls.
That's very cool. Brand and I have talked about that, I think, in our how to live stream an event, is that you definitely do. Not only do you need thinking about a host, someone to interact with the camera and directly address it, but you bring up a good point. Someone who can message on it, who can join in, who can share resources, act as tech support sometimes as
Exactly.
well. That's really, really cool. Any other features that you think that are really, that someone you think needs to have to have great interactivity at a live stream?
I think the poll features is quite important, because if you have people who are behind the camera, even if the camera is on, you don't know what's going inside their heads. So by activating polls, you can get opinions, you can check their knowledge, and because it's anonymous, you don't have to feel the pressure that, oh my God, I need to raise my hand and I don't feel comfortable expressing my opinion, in front of the whole conference or in front of my whole company. So the live polls is definitely something you can use.
Awesome. I love it. I think it creates a chance too for you to get rapid feedback, because that's something you also lack. You know, if you're sitting in a conference and you have an audience for you, if they're falling asleep, you can see them and be like, all right, we got to like blast some music, turn up the AC, whatever it may be. But like, you know, we have no idea how you guys are feeling. So if you can stick out a poll and say, hey, what'd you think of that last session? Boom, you get that instant feedback and adjust.
Exactly. And maybe just like one example, which I actually saw here at IMEX, there was a session about GDPR, and I don't know how the American audience is, you know, up to speed with this, but basically it is like this quite complex European law about data privacy, and there was a session about GDPR, and the speaker actually said we're going to do a quiz about this. So the whole 60 minutes, which is a quiz with Slido, and then basically he was polling the audience and revealing the correct answer, so you felt like you were engaged all the time, like until the end.
That's very cool, very cool. And I think that same thing can definitely be applied to a live stream. All right, so I want to come back and circle back. You mentioned for the Geneva event that they were asking really hard questions.
Yes.
And we've used Slido a lot at our events, and I've had clients that maybe don't do it the right way for how you should handle these hard questions. Especially you guys use it for town halls. We use it for town halls. Sometimes employees are asking hard questions that, you know, the executive might not feel comfortable asking. What's your best tips for moderation and handling those difficult situations?
So I can share an example from our own internal meetings. We don't actually turn the moderation on for those. And our CEO, in case there's a question which he doesn't know how to answer, I think he feels very comfortable admitting that and saying he might not be the best expert in that field, let's say finance or legal. So in that case, he just says like, I'll do some more digging, I'll connect with those people, and I'll get you the answers afterwards. So either you can do a newsletter, or you can do like a podcast, or you can even share the answers during an upcoming meeting. And we even do some projects. So for example, when we were talking about, let's say, getting new laptops, then you know you don't have the answer just yet, but you might actually do a project, connect with the right people, and come back to this topic later on.
Very cool. I think that's important too, is that idea that it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to answer it right then and there. You can answer it in a piece of content afterwards.
Correct.
And you know, export those questions and come back to them, which I think is super duper helpful. And I think one of the things that I like too, a feature I like as well, is that for example with Slido, you can chat with the person too. Like you can reply to the message or the question right then and there privately.
Exactly.
So I think you definitely need to make sure that there's some sort of chatting element too within it, because yes, they're sitting there asking questions, but sometimes people want to engage with each other, but also you might need to send something to someone. Oh, hey, here's a link, or, oh, you're having trouble. Well, let me not address the camera and answer that question, but let me instead find a way to answer your question maybe a little bit later, or let me give you a call or whatever it's going to be to give you.
It's actually a great point. There's a feature called replies, as you said, and we actually open the Q&A before the all hands, and people can send questions and then comment on each other questions. Ooh. So exactly as I mentioned with a final or you know, like finance or legal, you might have experts who might have better answers than actually the person on the stage.
I love it. I think you bring up a good idea too, to engage people too. You have to have a little bit of engagement beforehand as well. Get people prepped. Say, hey, start submitting your questions beforehand, because sometimes too you get on site, and with the live streams, these are 30 seconds, 60 seconds, sometimes delayed. And encouraging, hey, ask your questions early. I think is really, really important. So, all right, Nadia, I think that I have answered all the questions, but I have one last question for you. What is one thing that we didn't ask you about that you want to share with our audience that you think that they need to know about?
Tough question, but I just think like regardless if you're doing like remote, if you have remote audience or audience in the room, I think it's just important to consider this element of engagement, because I feel like it really can make a change. And there was one use case that I was personally really touched, and it was a school in Brazil where they were using Slido, and a girl actually said that she was thinking about committing a suicide, and because she asked it anonymously, and then she basically, people were had discussions about that and about mental health, they actually connected with her, and then she basically raised an issue like this via an online platform. So I think if humans connect with tech in the right way, it can really make an impact.
Wow. Definitely, definitely a touching story for sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Nadia, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you everybody for continuing to watch. We'll be right back with some more event icons.